with a good-looking beard. There's nothing like a man with a good-looking beard.
Welcome back to another iteration of Behind the Beard WNC. My name's Patrick Pohl, and joining me as always, Lewis and Mike Anderson, as we hit the summer soiree. The most popular person so far on the podcast has not been Mike Lewis or myself. In fact, it was Carson Jones, and so we've decided to bring Carson back onto the show and talk to him again, make him part of the crew, and we'll see how that goes from there. And it might wind up being more like a Who is the Missing Link episode now from here on out, where maybe at the end we'll have the fans vote off the person they like the least of Behind the Beard.
It was a difficult situation. It was a difficult vote to bring on Carson. He has no beard.
That's true. You have no beard.
In fact, I'm pretty sure Brendan can grow a better beard than Carson.
Yes, I have no doubt.
I have no beard, but I do have some WNC in me. So hopefully you guys will accept me for who I am and let me come as I am.
We were late getting started today. It wasn't even Pat this time. Of course, it was Carson.
And if you guys don't know, Pat's always the one late.
Always.
Not true.
So now there's two of them that are late, Lewis, we're going to have to deal with.
Yeah, it's all right.
Well, we don't have any other special guests other than Carson today to talk to, so it's going to return to just kind of a straight-up banter and kind of review some of the other stuff we talked about earlier, and then some new topics and whatever else tickles our fancy. But the idea of Behind the Beard WNC, in case you're just joining us, is it's basically just a group of friends that likes to talk about various topics that interest us. A lot of times it's high school sports, but it could be just about anything. We've dabbled on vacation spots, grilling. We've talked about pro NFL teams, movies, our favorite song when we were in high school. So, all bets are off. So if you don't like what you're listening to, obviously you have other options. We just hope you enjoy the entertainment, and the idea is for us to entertain ourselves. So there you have it.
So when we started this thing, guys, we mentioned that we'd like to get the big, maybe what we consider the big three on here as far as coaches. We did it.
Yeah, we've done it.
We got on Coach Walker, Coach Laws, and Coach Radford. So we did it. I know there's a couple more we'd like to get on, but we got the big three.
Yeah, and well listened to as well. I learned a lot. I know I'm sure you guys did too, but I know I did.
It was nice to sit down and talk to those guys in a relaxed setting. You know, oftentimes you see the coaches there on the field. They're pretty stressed.
They're a little heated, yeah.
Yeah, heated. It was nice to have a sit down and get to talk to them. I enjoyed it. I enjoy talking to all three.
And I think my opinion of all three of them kind of changed from the interviews.
So what do you think, Carson? You listened to them.
I did. As a listener, I thought that there was three things. There was one thing that really stood out was just how much each of them care about their craft, care about their coaching, care about their program, their kids. They were all very, proud of their programs that they've poured, so much time and resources into. I thought that it was just, good to hear as from a fan. Not particularly a big football guy. I don't coach high school football. I didn't play high school football, but
he might get voted off before the first episode.
I may get voted off for that comment. But football is probably my favorite sport to consume. Huge football fan. I just don't know a lot about X's and O's. But each of the coaches, I think what Lewis just said. I got a different perspective. My opinions changed on all three of them. And it was just kudos to you guys for getting those three coaches on here.
So, Pat, what was your big takeaway from talking to Coach Laws? I know you really look forward to that one.
Oh, well, yeah, being the Reynolds person at the table here, yes. There were a lot of insights in there, but it was really kind of interesting to hear how he broke down not just his methodology for choosing those hard conference games that he sets up at the beginning of the season and what that's all about, but also when he was going through kind of the recruiting process and what has happened in high school recruiting with things like the transfer portal, the COVID year, and some of the obstacles that are out there now for all the kids coming up that are aspiring to go that way.
When we interviewed Coach Walker, there were 8,144 kids in the transfer portal. So, Lewis, talking to Coach Laws, what were your thoughts? What were the things that stuck out to you?
I really enjoyed the off the air conversations we had with him. like his backstory of being the Don and all the kind of the joke that the kids carry on about. I really enjoy seeing that personable side of him. You know, I'm used to the X's and O's, the great coach. He runs a great program and all that. That off the field stuff and the banter that he goes on with the kids, it was awesome to see. And
really, with all three coaches, the off-air conversations were very interesting.
Absolutely.
Something I thought was cool to hear was you always wonder, these coaches give so much of their time in their life while they're coaching to their respective schools and programs, but him just seeming like a real human wanting to go. I think he mentioned going skiing for 2 weeks with his wife, about how that's something that they just would want to be in a position, because that's the question is who's going to take over Reynolds, and when Shane gonna leave, because it's going to leave on his terms when he feels that he's done all that he's wanting to accomplish and whatnot. And I just thought that was cool to hear that there's something about him and his wife and going to spend 2 weeks of uninterrupted time out on the slopes, and it really made me want to get into skiing and snowboarding, to be honest.
So a couple of things I kind of took away from Coach Laws. Number one, if you want to screw up a kicker, coach him.
And funny thing, like watching those practices, that they're never there, right? Like during practice, they're never there. It's just like, hey, kid, come kick the ball.
Come kick.
And a funny little story about a kicker was when I was when I went to Landry University, it was just a small school, so we had to do some fundraising. So our big fundraiser was we did the security on Clemson home football games. So we were on the field doing security for the games, and I'll never forget watching the kickers warm up. And I texted my family and I said, I really hope this does not come down to a kick, because I just watched him. I mean, he might have been 2 out of 10. I mean, it was just the most awful. And I was like, this kid is playing football at Clemson University and he could not kick. So if Coach Laws found if that's his little nugget, then I may be Clemson, because they were there in that kicker's ear and it was not working.
I would like to know how many coaches feel that same sentiment. I hope this doesn't come down to a kicker, unless you're Coach Radford last year.
Right, because he had the kicker of all kickers.
He can kick from 95 yards, right?
Right. So another thing Coach Law said, you don't replace Russ, Asher, and Day-Day. You pick up the slack in other places.
Yeah.
And that's true. You think about these programs that lose these big-time kids, you're you're probably not going to replace them, especially that next year in the mountains especially. You're right. You got to pick up the slack other places.
I want to say one thing about Cunningham, Asher Cunningham. Mm-hmm. Never seen anybody that no matter what formation, whatever's going to happen, he's going to get 5 yards carrying the ball. Right. There could be 9 defenders know he's coming.
Right.
He's going to get 5 yards.
And if you remember 2 years ago when we were all at Reynolds, he was a starting running back.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. And he gets 5 yards no matter what.
Yes. Back in the day, Reynolds played off 5 yards and a cloud of dust type offense, and that's when they went down to Orlando and beat Denison, Texas. That was in the Coach Poss years, and he reminds me of one of those running backs.
Yeah. And, to say a little bit more about the different styles of coaching and what Coach Laws has done at Reynolds is they have had turnover over the last 10, 15 years. I mean, they've played the different styles that you guys have mentioned. I know it seemed like when I was in school, the quarterback was Levi Ledford, and he threw for how many thousands of yards? And then
he ran for 1,000 yards and never crossed the line of scrimmage. He did a lot of scrambling back there.
So I'm not a football guy. I didn't notice that. But I just knew that he threw for a lot of yards. And then last year, they've won different types of ways and whatnot. So kudos to that coaching staff for always being able to adapt and whatnot.
Yeah. And the third thing that really, for Coach Laws, the parents recruiting parents and how he didn't like that. I'll be honest with you. I felt like he was looking at me. I have talked to some of his parents, which is I didn't do anything wrong. There's no rule
against it. And it happens at every school.
And when I was at Reynolds, I felt like I told parents, hey, you should come to Reynolds. But
you got me at Reynolds.
Right. I did. I told Lewis, you need to come to Reynolds. But I have I'm not going to say any more there, but I have reached out to some parents. The Coach Walker interview, very interesting. It was our very first one.
I think we were all a little nervous for that one.
We were nervous, and then Pat cut us like 30 minutes short because he was concerned we were going to go too long.
Guys, do we get the clock?
He's pointing at his watch. I could have talked another 45 minutes to Coach Walker. But one of the things he said that I kind of still chuckle at, the grass isn't always greener on the other side. It's just mowed at that time.
Well, the thing I liked about his interview, I feel like he connects with every player, whether it's his all-star player or the kid that's never seen the field. He connects with this kid and says, hey, what's best for you? Let's do that right. And let me tell you what that is. Now, do you want to accept that or not? And if that's not good, then here's what you have to do to get to that next level.
Right. He, I wish we'd have talked about it on air. He, in fact, even has a mental health coach on staff that the kids can go to and talk to about mental health issues. He's big on that, and he's a different kind of coach. When you talk to him, there's a lot of similarities to Coach Laws in the way he runs his program, but also a lot of differences. He really working top to bottom to get to all those kids.
Yeah, and I can speak for, after I wasn't a part of those interviews, but, speaking with Mike afterwards, his first, comment after, having both interviews with Coach Walker and Coach Laws is he, and I don't know if you remember saying this, but you said they were very, very, Coach Walker was there were so many similarities. There was obviously some differences. There's going to be some differences on, how they were brought up. Everything plays into differences and whatnot, but just how, they were both just football guys. And it's a different age, different type of things, but it just gets down to it's just they're both just two absolute football guys that are ate up with it.
Absolutely. One of the, I already mentioned one of the things he said, 8,144 kids in the transfer portal for college.
Wild.
That's insane.
It's just wild out there. And
think about how hard it is for a freshman to get in. There's already 8,100 kids who have college experience looking for a college.
Absolutely. It's changed just from 10 years ago when I was getting recruited. It's not just football that's being affected. Baseball's being affected by it. It's a Western Carolina baseball player today just committed, I saw on Twitter, to NC State. So it's just, I think it's added, it is added a whole different new dynamic. And I know that if you're over the age of, not to age you guys, but most people that are over the age of 40 years old,
right,
they have a strong opinion against it, and they think that you should you signed a contract, you signed the NLI, your national letter, your NLI, your national letter of intent. And I think it's just changed because as much as coaches are leaving, as much as, when coaches are getting bought out of contracts, if you look and saw that there was $100 million of coaches buyout last year in college football, it's just being signed into just one place for 3 years. Now it's, coaches are having to treat those freshmen. They're having to recruit players while they coach players. They're having to keep them there. Tennessee's best baseball player, their pitcher, Chase Burns, has just entered the transfer portal today officially, and he is the highest profile baseball player in the portal. He throws 102 miles an hour, could be the first overall pick next year. And Tennessee just came out this past week, $100 million renovation to their baseball stadium. So it's what more can he do? And I saw a tweet right before I got on here. It said, Chase Burns doesn't need Tennessee baseball. He's going to be a high-profile draft pick without him. And Tennessee baseball doesn't need Chase Burns. They recruit at a high level every single season. So it's one of those, it's the way things are going to be moving forward, and who is going to be able to adapt, who is going to be able to capitalize on these different opportunities.
So let me ask you this. So now, does it make more sense for these kids, instead of trying to get to the bigger D1 programs, do they go to Western Carolina, do they go to Lenoir-Rhyne, and then transfer into the big schools their sophomore, junior year? I mean, is that the easier way to do it?
It goes, to me, I think it still should have been this way years ago. You should go where you think is the best fit for you. It's going to be, and we spoke about it with Caden Jones, about where he's going to be pushed, where he's a different person. He's a different type of athlete. So he probably thinks he is going to contribute at Alabama because they don't recruit people that don't think they're going to contribute at Alabama.
He bet on himself, right?
Yep, he bet on himself. And so it goes to, if I'm a senior in high school, or if I'm in high school and I'm getting recruited on any sport, I'm going to where I have the best relationship with the coach. And I know that, recruiting is what it is. It's a coach can definitely can definitely make something seem like it's not. They can recruit you a type of way. I would talk to players that start for that coach. I would talk to players that rode the bench for that coach. I would talk to both of them. And I would find someone that you could find the closest that coach coached the starter, the 3-hole, as he did the bench player. And I would find someone that cares about, Lewis said, I mean, his big takeaway from Coach Walker was that he cares about each individual in their, in their circumstances, where they're at currently, and trying to meet their needs, not just his needs. It's cool to get as many big commits as possible. He wants them to go to the right fit. But to answer your question, I think playing time. Most people want to play. Most athletes want to contribute. I would go where you think realistically, and that has to do with money. So it's who's going to give you the most money. If you get a walk-on spot out of high school in NC State, or you get a 50 or 75% scholarship to Western Carolina, I mean, where do you think you're going to have more opportunities?
Right. It's gonna be Western Carolina. I mean, it's
going to be Western Carolina, and go there and produce. I hope Owen Michelson, our senior that's going to UNCA, if it's up to me, I hope he's not at UNCA in 2 years. I hope he goes there and thrives, and I hope that Carolina picks up the phone. I hope NC State picks up the phone. It's one of those that you can't, you're not just competing against 27 guys, and it's competition. We talk about it every day. Competition breeds the best, breeds excellence.
The other thing about Coach Walker that I think Lewis and I both really enjoyed is when he looked at Lewis dead in the eyes and said, "Play us,
play us, yeah,
play us."
Absolutely.
And I think,
and I really think he would be open to play anybody.
I think hell, he's playing teams from New Jersey, Tampa, Florida, and Southern Georgia.
My question for you guys, football guys right here.
Right.
If they played Reynolds this fall, what's the spread?
So this year coming up,
what's the spread?
I mean, it's hard for me. You go ahead, because, obviously I'm biased. I think Christ School would be the favorite because...
You think they would be the favorite?
Reynolds lost so much on defense.
Okay.
Now, they have a lot of offense. They got Max Guest, who is a phenomenal running back.
Okay.
But they lost a lot on defense.
I'm on the flip side of that. I'm still... Real football is played in the counties.
Yeah.
I haven't seen the Christ School play.
Like so what's the spread? What's the spread?
I would say Reynolds by 10.
10 points, so more than a possession.
Absolutely.
Okay.
I think I'm the total opposite. I think it's Christ School by 10. Now, it's true. I have a son there.
Right.
And a lot's going to have to do with their offensive line and if they bring some more guys in. But they got to.
And I do know, speaking from going to games with Mike last year at Christ School, and going to games, and we went to games, and there was, as Rocket football people as it gets at those games, because that's who your friends are, that's who care about Luke. And so we're just talking with people that know a lot more football than I do. Last year, there was a glaring difference at the line of scrimmage.
Yes.
And so I think just for all of the listeners, Mike was not in the 10-point spread last year. It was Reynolds would dominate the line of scrimmage.
Their defense was insane.
Which, if you dominate the line of scrimmage, you're pretty much going to win the game.
Very good chance you win the game.
But we have a couple of real nice quarterbacks. We got a lot of good kids coming back. We still got to find some offensive linemen. I hear they're coming. We'll see. Either way, they still finished second in the MAC conference, in my opinion.
I like that.
Like last year, this year. I think they can beat Reynolds this year, but the worst case scenario, they're second in the MAC.
So you think they lose to Asheville?
No, I think they beat Asheville. I think they lose to Reynolds. That makes them second.
Okay.
No, that's last year.
That's what you just – okay, last year.
I'm saying this year, I think they can beat Reynolds, and they could win the MAC.
I really wish we could put that argument to bed.
I do too.
Even if it was a scrimmage, man, something. Give me something.
Absolutely.
Give me something.
Yes.
It's never going to happen. Coach Laws will never play Christ School.
I think he was very clear on that. He said if we could play by the same rules.
Right. And he's talking about reclassification.
There is something I would like to add there is he mentioned that Raven Gap does not pull from Fairview. And what I would like to be very clear on is that if Raven Gap could pull the best players from Fairview, they would.
No, instead they take it from Tuscola and Pisgah.
Those
guys.
Oh, let's not overlook all their international transfers that come over.
So, but just even in Tuscola's backyard, the Bryson boy, he in Minnesota's bowl game, he had an interception return for a touchdown, right. And so I don't. I don't necessarily, and like I said, Coach Laws may have a different relationship with their coach that I'm not aware of. That could very well be the case. But if those guys, some of their defensive players, or if Max Guest wanted to go put a Raven Gap jersey on next year, I don't know if their coach would say no.
No, definitely not.
But that's just my 2 cents.
I think it's a lot easier to recruit 15 miles away versus 100.
Right.
Yes, and when you say like Raven Gap, it just seems like it seems farther away.
It's really just in It's on the other side of Franklin, North Carolina. It's not that far.
Yes, not that far, but as a mom, it's like you're in Fairview. It's it probably seems a little bit further away to go to Raven Gap.
The other thing about Coach Walker, he talked about, they got players worldwide. Chinese players, they have Canadian players, they have players from everywhere. He's not just recruiting is not the right word, but I know Lewis said, Lewis's comment was, how does it feel to have the best players from Buncombe County? He's like, well, it's not Buncombe County we're looking at. It's Florida. It's Texas. It's Canada.
Well, yes, they do get players from there, but they definitely look to Buncombe County.
Well, sure.
There is no
They're in
way.
Buncombe County.
Right.
I think it goes you take it, and he absolutely looks in. He would want the best players in Buncombe County. It's just like any college. You need to win your state. The best basketball players, Jaron Stevenson was top recruit in basketball. Carolina just lost him to Alabama. And it's like you want to win. I saw so many things about how you want to win your state. You want to win your area. That's where it starts. So I definitely think that he is he would welcome any player that could help his program. And I also don't think he's at fault for that. I think that
Every coach wants the best players they can
every
get.
coach would want the best players. I know kids at North Buncombe that went to Reynolds and played. I know a kid at North Buncombe, his little brother, Joe Jones' little brother, went and played at Asheville and made an impact on Asheville's team. And it's one of those, like, it's just, it is.
Every time Irwin has a top-notch running back, he ends up at Reynolds. I'm not saying anything wrong.
That's true.
Derek Edgington and the kid with the long hair, I can't remember his name.
Yep.
And I apologize for that. But, it just seems there are kids that go, I wish we would have asked the question, how many of your kids are on the, what's the thing we had to fill out when we went there?
Was it the DAR or something like that? District realignment or something?
The DR form.
Yeah, DAR.
Because even Pat, Lewis, and I were all had kids at Reynolds. We all were out of district at one time or another and had to fill out the DR. Yeah. Brendan lives in the Inca district.
Right.
We are currently in an Inca district house, and his son goes to Reynolds. It's not anybody's. It's like I said, you cannot fault parents and kids and other. It's just the way of the future for them to do what they think is best for themselves, right, wrong, or indifferent. Sure. They may be wrong. They may not be. But it's one of those that is the, and it goes beyond that. But a couple other things that I thought were very, very interesting was, Coach Radford's his.
Wait, are we moving to Coach Radford now?
Are we?
I think we should, yeah.
Okay. So I did enjoy talking to Coach Walker. I think he's a top-notch man, and I'm glad
Mike's got to get his last piece in on Coach Walker. Coach Walker, he really enjoyed his time with you.
Shut up. So, Coach Radford, I really enjoyed talking to Coach Radford.
Oh,
he's got it going on
I
over there.
enjoyed listening.
Carson told me we would enjoy talking to him. Go ahead, Carson.
Coach Radford was my Legion coach after my senior year of high school, baseball.
By the way, Carson's only 16, so.
I'm 27. But anyways,
Close enough.
He was a baseball coach over at Irwin. This was when he was at Irwin, and we really just clicked. We hit it off. We had a great relationship, and some of the things that I thought I did think the hottest take in all of the interviews was that if his son had an offer from an academy or Alabama, his son would have to go to the academy, which I thought was the hottest take. But you know what? We're here for hot takes, and that's fine. I hope that comes up one day because
Coach Radford's son is going to Army over Alabama.
You heard it here first.
You heard it here first.
But like I said, I think that I know Coach Cardillo over there, Coach Cheek, North Buncombe guy represent. I know that they got very, very good people in their huddles, in their stuff. I knew that you guys would like that. They are trying some new age stuff to keep kids there.
Yeah.
I remember, seeing a social media thing. I sent it to Mike, and I was like, I know you're a Christ school guy, but this is freaking awesome. And they brought their middle schoolers up for their official visits to the high school. And I was like, as a middle schooler, it's like you've got to try to somehow recruit your own kids, because guess what? If they're not, then Mike may call their parents. And
I will call your parent if you're a good football player.
And it's just one of those things. It's like when I was at North Buncombe, we were trying to get kids over there. We got Inca starting catcher for my junior season, because guess what? We didn't have a catcher. And it just goes with, Robertson's trying to get, 2 players from Reynolds went over to TC Robertson and won a baseball state championship.
All parents want their kids' teams to do well.
That's not anything that's just started.
And listen, if you're in a good situation, you're going to tell other parents.
No, but Lewis, what was your takeaways with Coach Radford?
So Coach Radford was the most image changing for me in the interviews. Obviously, going to Reynolds for 4 or 5 years. I mean, you're kind of taught not to like those Asheville guys, right?
Right.
Like when you're sitting on the
But he is a
side,
Reynolds guy.
He is a Reynolds guy, but I don't think that is really true anymore. Our off the air talk with him. But talking to him, the one big thing I liked was the leadership class.
Heck yeah. I mean, leadership
You can
program.
say it, hell yeah.
I mean, I just want to give you the quote, then you can finish. We never ask kids to do anything on the football field we don't teach them. But we ask them to be leaders. We don't teach them to be leaders.
Correct.
I think the one
be a leader.
thing, and you've heard me say this before, less than 1% of those guys are going to go to college, right? Every one of those guys is going to lead a family one day.
That's right.
And so many schools do not prepare these kids to do that, right? Think about it. Maybe if it was for me, I started a family at 19. So a year after high school, I'm trying to lead an individual how to be a good man, right?
Wow.
So
congrats on the.
It's very important for that leadership class.
His wife was only 12.
Yeah.
Just
she was
kidding.
18. She was 18.
Okay. But no,
we were together 7 years before that. So
Lewis, that's okay. But anyways, I agree. The leadership thing with them, with them being able to prepare their kids to, life after. I know Coach Laws mentioned it too. Coach Walker mentioned it. It's very, very, very important to prepare their student athletes for what's after. Every coach mentioned that there's going to be life after football.
Right. So in 20 years, are they going to be successful? Who cares if they play D1 football? Who cares if they whatever?
And really none of that matters.
In 20 years, are they going to be good men?
And there's always been quotes. I think my mom was, my dad was always the one growing up. Work hard, go to practice, do your best. Not a super emotional, super emotional guy. Although we've gotten very, very, much closer on that end as I've entered adulthood and started a family of my own. But my mom always told me that, people won't remember the stuff that that you did or say, but they'll always remember how you made them feel. So that was my thing, was that if, as me coaching, young individuals now, they're not going to remember, how I told them to be able to hit the fastball middle away to right center and then hit a hanging curveball to left center. I mean, they're not going to remember exactly on things about that, but they're also, they're going to remember that Coach Jones was there for them, or there was different things like that. So I thought that each coach did that. I thought Coach Radford, as much as any of them was caring about them. I thought one thing that he said was interesting was about their student sample size, about how it's going to get smaller. And I know as a younger individual than you guys. I'm not.
He's 16. Go ahead.
16, but with a young family, Asheville's very expensive to live in, and so when he, he brought that up about
Talking
how
about
it's going
getting
to
assistants, you can't afford to pay them enough.
No, you cannot afford to pay him enough. I know that as an assistant.
I'm sure Inca gives you the big bucks, but go ahead.
No, all the money goes to Pat's compound right here. But that's just that's where the money gets allocated in the Inca district.
But the other thing he talked about, a large percentage of his players don't ever get to leave Asheville, so they go on trips.
Yep.
Right. That's something no county school is doing right now. Right.
No.
There's no.
He's taking all the kids that want to these college recruiting camps.
Well, not only that, they're going and watching games.
Yeah.
They're experiencing other livelihoods outside of Asheville.
Yeah, and I do think that we should all appreciate that what he mentioned about the HBCs and what
absolutely
and what coach a coach, that's Coach Radford's white, and so he's reaching out. And
Thanks for clearing that up.
I'm just explaining to the listeners. This is podcasting here. I'm explaining to the listeners that it might have, been uncomfortable for him.
Absolutely.
Or he might not be as respected in that community. But guess what? He is still reaching out and trying for his student athletes, for his kids, because he said those are his sons.
Yeah, what's their best interest? That's what he's looking at.
Their best interest. He said he's got, was it 2 daughters? And then how many sons? And and I felt, just by listening, I felt that he had me bought all the way in, that he cares about those kids.
And that's one thing Mike and I talked about when we left there. Like, he truly cares about his kids as well.
I believe he does.
Right.
He's a new generation coach.
It seems like, one of the things we were surprised to learn, they don't have a workout program during fourth period.
No fourth period workout.
So he has to figure out how these boys are going to get in the weight room, still have time to do all that, get their homework done and practice, and still get a good night's sleep.
Yeah. One of the interesting things, no practice fields at Asheville High. I had never thought about that.
I have not either. They share the field together.
With lacrosse and soccer and
field hockey.
Hockey and whoever else. And then, so that I found that interesting. The other thing I found interesting is that he coached in Shelby and lived in Asheville.
Yeah. What did he say, hour 45?
Yes, an hour 45. Each way, every day.
The hours and mile. I mean, it's like...
That's like Carson as a salesman.
I mean, that is just... I don't know. Does Shelby reimburse him for gas? Because that's
no way. I guarantee it's a no, yeah.
He also said they had... we talk about Reynolds having fourth period weight training. Shelby had 2 weight training classes.
I think that's something that we could discuss more. It's how much of that is an advantage to these programs. And I know that Reynolds has their specific weight training for football.
They also have one for basketball. It's a different period.
They have one for basketball. I know West Henderson baseball. This may be breaking news. West Henderson baseball starts at 1:40, so their practice starts.
Carson also coached at West Henderson. I don't know if you knew that.
No, I did not know that.
I did, but every baseball player is in fourth period baseball class.
Does Inca have a weight training for like fourth period?
Inca does not. So Coach Griffin has to go at 6 in the morning and work them out, or he has to work them out after practice.
That's another thing Coach Walker said that I found interesting. When he said, I asked him, "How do you get kids there at 6 a.m. to work out?" What did he say?
Ask them.
I asked him.
Yeah, and it's more like, I'm going to tell you.
I'm going to tell you.
Right.
But they show up.
But that's how, we talk about preparing people. It's like, does your employer, do you get asked to do a lot of things, or is it more like there's an expectation? It's
I'm going to need you to do this.
I'm going to need you to do this. And guess what? You usually do it. So that's how, that is where, when you say preparing, young student athletes for the next level and for the next phase of life, it's like there's some responsibility built on, and that's how you start doing it.
I really think Coach Walker and Coach Radford are kind of like the next, what's the word I'm looking for? They're the next generation coaches.
Right.
Coach Law's a great coach. They've won games for a long time.
And
he's an awesome coach.
They'll continue to win as long as he's there, right?
Yes.
Right. They will continue to win. He will always win games.
I think that we could go on and say, I think they will continue to win, because what's our standard? Are they going to win as much as they did when Coach Laws was there? Maybe not, but if Coach Laws is not there, they're still going to win some football games. Let's make that very, very clear.
That may be true, but I will say this. I think if Coach Laws asked his team to lay down in traffic, they would probably do that for
Absolutely,
him.
Absolutely. But let's not act like they're going to go from a 10, 11, 12 game win team to 1 or 2. They're going to beat Inca with Coach Laws or without Coach Laws.
I've been on the other side of this, where Coach Ford leaves, and then it's 8 years of really bad football.
Will you guys ever be good again at football?
It's going to take a coach to be dedicated like Coach Ford was, and for these players to really buy in. If you look at the Owen program, they've had 3 different head coaches the last 3 years. It's tough to build a program.
Absolutely.
Sure.
So,
do you think that starts in the off season? What does a coach need to go in there and do to get them all bought in? Does he need to be from the Valley?
I don't think that's a requirement. I think Coach Gibson right now is doing a great job of getting these kids to buy in. Just from listening to my kids talk.
He is from the Valley, right?
I'm not sure.
Didn't he play there?
I don't think he did.
Really?
I don't know. I'm not real sure. I'm not confident in that.
Well, that shows you that it doesn't truly matter.
It doesn't.
You don't know. You would know that off the top of your head if that mattered.
Correct. These kids are already starting to buy into what Coach Gibson's saying. So
That's good.
But I think a head coach has a huge amount to do with how well the program runs. So when Coach Laws leaves, I would predict there's like 3 years that everything's still the standard. But then after that, all the kids that were with Coach Laws are no longer there. And it's all formed by that new coach. So watch out.
I think the biggest question in WNC football is who's going to be who's the replacement. Pat, as a Reynolds guy representing the Reynolds at the table,
who read his face guy?
Who is Coach Laws's?
Pat just had a mini stroke.
No, Coach Laws is not going anywhere. He will be coaching post-mortem if need be.
And I said that at the beginning of the show that he will coach as long as he absolutely wants to, until he wants to spend enough skiing trips and whatnot with his wife, which, I mean, that makes me want to quit and retire. I don't know how I can do that, but I would love to do that right now.
So being at Reynolds for forever, I think the expectation was maybe that Coach Radford would come to Reynolds when Coach Laws retired.
Well, before that, I mean, it was going to be Towery, right? I mean,
had heard that.
That
yes.
was the rumor. It was going to be Towery.
And then it was going to be Radford because he showed up at Asheville and won a whole bunch of games. So we talked to Coach Radford. Now listen, I'm not saying he's telling us 100% the truth. It is what it is. He said he loves Asheville and his plan is not to go to Reynolds. Now he would probably never tell us that Reynolds was the next step.
Correct.
But just talking to him and how the budget at Asheville, because it's the only high school in the city. It's Asheville High.
And their budget's way more than any other school.
Way more than Reynolds.
Yeah.
I don't know.
I think
I did not get the feeling that Coach Radford was going to
say that.
Asheville.
I think he has to say that. I think that from a outside of football guy, from just being around sports in Western North Carolina, being around schools and whatnot, the overwhelming, if there were Vegas odds, the favorite to be the Asheville coach, to be the Reynolds coach, would be Coach Radford, is what the people, and like I said, I don't know people and plugged in at Reynolds. I don't know people. This is a purely that just he went to Reynolds.
He did go to Reynolds.
He went to Reynolds. He was an unbelievable. He's an unbelievable coach. He's doing things the right way. You can see what
he turned Asheville around in a year.
Pretty impressive.
The guy I'm thinking is Coach Morgan. He's the offensive coordinator. He was head coach at Robertson, head coach at McDowell. I'm thinking he may be the next. Now, there's a lot of options there at Reynolds.
They're going to have as many options as they want.
Sure. It's a very attractive job.
It's a moot point. Coach Laws is not going anywhere. He is going to coach in perpetuity.
So let me ask you this, Carson. NIL, name, image, and likeness. When you were in college, did you have a big NIL deal? Did you make a ton of money on it?
I did not. I went from, at Appalachian State where football paid for every sport at App. And we would go in a couple times a year. We had gloves. We'd have cleats. We'd have gear. We had a Rawlings contract. We had anything. We had Christmas a couple times throughout the year. Thanks to our football program. So when people, from other sports, when people are like, "Oh, these football players," the money's in football. Let's get that
hands down.
Let's
Absolutely.
get that out there that there's money in football. But from personal experience, then I went to a smaller school, Division II. We didn't have a football team. We had a men's soccer team that was ranked top 5 nationally every year. We had
Did a lot of people show up to watch that?
I would say people in Greenwood, relative. I mean, there was a decent amount of people, but no, not.
So you think like above 50?
I was going to say 30.
Okay.
I was going to say 30. But I mean, those 30 people were rowdy. And we got a new president my junior year. We got a new president.
Was it Obama?
And the first thing he did was pass selling alcohol on campus. And so athletic events, admissions went up. People, and there was
if you sold alcohol at high school games.
Oh, let's talk about where the money's at.
Quadruple your income. Oh
yes.
my God! Anyway, I'm sorry.
No, NLI wasn't a thing when I was coming through school. Would not have been a thing for me personally.
That was last year, right?
Yes. But to answer your question, no, I didn't have an NIL deal. I was trying to think of where I would have wanted one.
So, did you know anyone that did on campus?
It wasn't a thing, was it?
No,
Wasn't a
absolutely
thing.
was not a thing. But I will say what is a thing is that I had class. I had class with multiple football players at App State, and I saw them very rarely. And and I will say, like, and I know people, gave Chapel Hill a hard time for just passing kids or this or that, and it's like, well, I mean, I'm not saying that every football player just doesn't go to class or doesn't do this, but I will say that the resources that are there, there were individuals that I was in class with. I didn't see them very much.
I'll say this: going to Western, you will see the football players. I was in class this last spring with one.
I actually had a study hall with a assistant Reynolds football coach that played football at App. His name's Chandler Greer, and I will say that he did go to class. He went to study hall.
So, Pat, I know you've done some extensive research on this NIL in high school. What's your thinking?
Yeah, so I'm not a fan of the idea of NIL in high school.
At any level or just high school?
Not in high school. I mean, I'm kind of in line with how Coach Laws phrased that. It's kind of killing the game and the high school experience. And
so is it just
anything
continuity that Coach Laws says you're going to agree with?
Agony.
I mean, everyone's wondering at this table.
No.
I mean, so there's a couple things about.
But I will back that up and say I agree with you. At high school level, there's probably not a need for it. Those kids are still living with their parents, everything else. At the college level, maybe you should get paid for it.
Here's the thing about high school NIL. How many kids are actually going to take advantage of it in reality?
Well, I think in reality, if you look at marketing budget across companies, they will reach out to anyone they think will make them money. So I think that will transfer down to high schoolers once it's open.
Okay, let's just for a minute think about Owen football.
We're not talking about Owen football. Let's think about Reynolds football. Would Max get an NIL deal?
Okay,
Yes.
okay, Max maybe, but who else? Who else has a face that's not famous, maybe that's recognizable enough to be a spokesman for a company?
Well, let's talk about Christ School.
Okay.
They have, 7 of the top 25 recruits out of North Carolina?
Yeah.
So would those 7 not get a deal?
I still don't know. So,
do you think those 7 are getting a deal from their university and boosters or from people in the community? Because that's where I think the biggest difference is.
That's the question. Who's going to pay these kids?
So if it's just strictly from companies in the area, think about how many people show up to a Reynolds game. It's fairly full on big game nights. Now, if they're playing Inca, no one's going to show up. But on a big game, it's pretty full.
Correct.
You two have been to Christ School games. Even on a big night, we're talking 100 people.
Yeah, but the thing that draws people to Christ School is not we're going to make money on tuition, right? So if we open up the door on NIL, then we can say, Booster A, who owns this business, you can do an NIL deal and attract more people to this school.
I agree, and that's why I think NIL affects private schools more than public because there's more money in the private school area.
Listen, it's the same thing. Every coach out there can say that they don't participate in this. I've seen it in the past where kids get cars, everything else from a county school. So everyone can predict or say they don't do it. It happens. I know a kid it happened to that I went to high school with. So they can say that they're not playing by the same rules. They are. I mean, it happens. So if there's a booster out there that wants to donate a car to a kid behind the scenes, it still happens, whether there was an NIL back then or not.
Pat, as a millionaire, would you be willing to be an NIL supporter for Reynolds and pay 10 or 12 kids to play at Reynolds?
No, let's say you had let's say you really had the ability. Say you wanted to guarantee a state championship next year, and it took $100,000. I would do that in a heartbeat if that meant Owen got a state championship.
No,
I would.
Oh, no. I absolutely would. I don't have it, but I would. Whatever payment I need to do to ensure that state championships are just so hard, so unbelievably difficult to come by.
We talked on this show that state championships aren't that important.
I agree. When you're looking at state championships versus a college scholarship, it's not. But when we're all sitting around talking at a campfire or something, I'm going to do anything I can to get all the kids I can at my school to guarantee a state championship.
So, but you're still against NIL for. So, are you for it in college? I just don't.
In college, I would say I'm 100% for it. Because
What
those
makes
kids are
the
on their
difference,
own.
though, Pat? What makes the difference for you? Is it just that the kids aren't mature enough to know what to do with the money? Is it how? What is the determining factor? Because there's 18-year-olds in high school. There's 18-year-olds that can serve in the country. So what's the gap? What's the jump they need to make for them to be able to accept the NIL in your eyes?
Yeah, so what's the defining parameter? Where does it stop being a kid's game and a joy, fun, and become a business where you're trying to become a marketed component?
So hold on a minute with that thought. Do you think high school ball is about fun right now? Or is it about getting that scholarship?
I think it's about fun. And
There is no way you can sit here and say it's about fun. Because those boys...
Yes, I can.
Pat, don't let him shout you down. You go, Pat.
The vast majority of kids are not going to college.
No, but that's
Most
their
of them,
dream.
So do you think, but you don't think there's a business aspect to high school football?
Well, sure there is.
As the treasurer of the Booster Club, I would think
I
you
was
would know
going to
that.
say so when it comes to putting people in seats and whatnot,
Yeah.
I mean,
Okay, well, you're right. There's a business aspect to the football, but it's a little different at the high school level. And you just brought up the boosters. All the revenue that comes in goes to the athletes and to the athletics programs within the high school. There's not a huge signing bonus or CEO pay for that type of thing. Coaches might get some stipends in the playoffs, but we're not talking about incentive-based business strategies to try and grow revenue based on in that world.
And to be clear, incentive-based NIL deals are not acceptable. You cannot say, I will give your quarterback a free car wash every time he throws a touchdown pass. That is not acceptable. But you can give them if you show up and, if you show up here and do an appearance, I can pay you this amount of money or give
did you guys see the LSU quarterback that had the NIL deal and he ended up losing his starting spot and just hung it up?
No.
So LSU quarterback, I forgot, bad podcasting. I don't have his name offhand, but he got $1 million or whatever it was. Strike two. And he lost his starting position. Well, he just walked away from it. And guess what? So I do think that there's going to be it's going to regulate itself in the college football level. I think that these astronomical numbers that you're going to see, I mean, these business owners and stuff, I think that there's going to be something that's going to regulate itself as far as kids just being able to just handing out free money and them not having to perform, them not having to live out their contract, them being able to transfer the next year. It's just like it's kind of the wild, wild west right now.
Absolutely. There's two sides of it. Well, there's more than two, but there's two sides. So are you talking more about companies paying Lewis, I want to pay you $250 to show up and just be here at my business and draw some people in? Or are we talking about booster clubs and paying, hey, I want Lewis and Carson to come over from North Buncombe to play for me at Inca?
The reason the NIL deal exists is because of the booster clubs and trying to attract people to schools.
And around here, I mean, Reynolds probably has the biggest booster club. They have $2.5 million in the bank.
What?
As a treasurer, you know that.
We don't have anywhere close to that.
I will say, the Reynolds booster bank account has always been a thing of urban myth at every other school.
It is an urban myth, and we're not going to share anything. I was the treasurer before Pat. We're not going to share how much is in there, but we pay the bills.
I would like to go out and make a prediction that you guys have more in your account than majority of other schools.
I would say so. I mean,
absolutely.
Here's why. Because football is king in Western North Carolina, and Reynolds is the king of football in Western North Carolina.
Yes, and I think it's well deserved. If you can put people in seats, Reynolds has put a product on the field. That's why we talked about who's going to replace. It's like, I don't think they're going to get some slap-ass replacement to replace Coach Laws.
Are you going to bleep that out? He just said ass.
It's okay.
Okay, go ahead.
I don't think they're going to get somebody that's just going to run their program into the ground in 3 years.
Coach
I just
Laws
don't.
is not going anywhere.
He's not going anywhere.
Coaching in perpetuity.
You heard it here first. He's coaching for post-mortem is what was said.
That's what he said. So I want to share.
I love it.
I want to share a few things with you. So the surrounding states, Virginia and Tennessee, permit the NIL in high school. South Carolina and Georgia are looking at it. Kentucky says no as of now. Here's some other things that I kind of looked at today. If you put it on the student athlete, it's increased pressure and responsibility on the athlete. I think they probably feel a little more they have to perform. They also have to show up at these events where they're at. Corruption is another thing that can creep in with NILs, with booster clubs, paying these kids. I'm not necessarily talking about Western North Carolina. You got a lot of schools in Charlotte where there's already a lot of transferring around.
But
Paper performance is illegal. Like a car wash for every home run you hit is not acceptable. And my question is, how many kids will actually benefit from NIL? How many on each team? Is there a roadmap? And how do they get started? Because I don't think you're only talking about one or two kids on each team.
Max.
Max Guest at Reynolds, Caden Jones at Christ School.
But I was saying one or two people max.
Yes, one or two
but
max.
But yes, Max Guest as well.
Right, one or two max.
So that's one reason I'm against it in high school. Because if think about that division in the locker room that would occur. But on top of that, the only reason I might be for it, think about the kids that is like, hey, they don't have a father figure or anything in the home, and they have to choose to go to work instead of play football.
I still don't think the money is enough to matter.
But we don't know what the money could be.
You're right. We don't. We have no idea. I don't think it's the Alabama quarterback didn't he get like $1 million?
Yeah, and I think
that's never going to happen in high school.
And I'm glad
you say that's never going to happen. That might happen.
Not in Western North Carolina.
Maybe not in Western North Carolina, but you think like Miami, somewhere like that, that could happen.
Absolutely. A big school in Dallas, a big school in Georgia.
Right.
And I think that, we can say we know exactly these kids still live at home. It's like, do we know how many kids are classified as homeless in Buncombe County schools?
Do you know?
It's a lot. It's a lot more than you thought.
There's a whole lot. At
It's
every
a whole
school,
lot.
there's 4 or 5. I know that. At
It's
every
a
school, there's 4 or 5.
whole lot. I knew West Henderson had significantly more than 4 or 5, and West Henderson I thought was like a very yuppity up. And it just, I was like, holy
Is that an official
smokes.
term, yuppity?
I don't know.
If both of you guys think about someone on the Booster Club, she spent a lot of her time taking care of some of these homeless kids that were at Reynolds.
Right.
And these people, no one knew it.
Right.
I was very off put when I found out that there was homeless people going to right. I mean,
right.
My mom taught at Hall Creek up until last year, and she had students that lived. Are you guys familiar with the Mountaineer Inn on Tunnel Road?
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, they lived in the Mountaineer Inn. That's where they lived and it was just like, talk about like just absolutely being crushing, because it's like that. I mean, it just made me think about how lucky and blessed I was and all that stuff, and my privilege that I had. It's like, we don't know exactly. $5,000 may not be a lot for us, but I mean, a couple $100 for a high school. I remember when I was in college, and it was like a cookout tray. I mean, that was it. That was like the thing, was going to get a $4.99 cookout tray, and that was more than last year, because they're like $8.79.
Pat, what are your thoughts on the NIL? What are you thinking there?
Well, here's where I am with it. Like, you've got situations where you have child actors. So let's say, you've got a local grocery store chain and they want to hire a kid to do a commercial or whatever, regardless of the sports. Power to them. That's America. You can go do that. I think that if you're in high school and you're an athlete and you have somebody offers this opportunity to do something like that, it's the same bucket. However, are you going to do that in the name of the sport of your school? Don't think you can do that, because you don't own that logo, that trademark, that school, if you're going out to make the business on yourself. I'm not a fan of the NIL idea in high school, because I think, it's a kid's game. We need to keep it a kid's game. They can start making adult decisions when they're adults at the college level, and then they can go on and make those decisions. I will say this. I don't know if you guys follow him, but I followed Dave Ramsey for most of my adult life financially, and he's shared many, many times on his program when he would work with those young professional athletes that would come out and all this money would get dumped on them, and they would go out and completely make a mess of their lives with it and have nothing to show for it at the end of their run and whatever, even if it's a college NIL deal. They don't have any sense of what to do with the money. There need to be conversations about that aspect of it too.
And that's the other problem. There's no regulation. There's no help. Nobody really understands the whole thing.
Welcome, Coach Radford's leadership program.
Yep. Right.
Hopefully it was a Dave Ramsey program. I don't know.
And, I think that, what Pat just said, though, could be used in a lot of different things. As far as, what exactly are we? I remember one thing. When I graduated from high school, and I think I went to college, and I had to pay rent. And rent was, when I went to the apartment complex, they wanted it on a check. And I'm not kidding. I never wrote a check before. I never had checks, and I was like. So I went and made it all the way through high school without knowing how to write a check. I didn't know how to put what went on the front of a letter. If I was going to mail you a letter, I didn't know what went on the front of the letter. And so I just think there's just different things that our education, there's gotta be some things that we can get students, not just student athletes, but students just more prepared because I think we're all seeing that the workplace is dwindling. And so we've got to get kids more prepared, and that is even if it's educating them on like trade schools. I know this is getting away from sports, but it's like there's a lot of trade programs at Buncombe or at AB Tech that you could go to and get a absolute great job, great degree, and be able to support your stuff. But it's like, do these kids know that? Do they know about student loans? Do they know about these things that, if it makes all fine and dandy, you go get a degree, you go pay all this money, to go to ETSU to be an elementary school teacher. You go to ETSU, get these student loans,
You'll never pay them off.
And then guess what? You're making $35,000 for the next forever. And so, how does that? And then interest. It's like I didn't know what interest was until this is a whole nother conversation. But absolutely, there needs to be some sort of financial class in school. I mean, there has to be. I agree.
Because kids don't know how to write checks. They don't know their bank. They look at the bank account. Well, it says I have $200 in. Well, the $500 check you wrote hasn't cleared yet. They don't understand that. And this is a whole other conversation, a whole other problem with schools.
Yep.
But Carson's 100% correct. I agree. So, talk a minute about high school baseball. I know we don't talk about baseball a lot.
Yeah, Carson's here. Might as well get a baseball
but we had
going.
2 state champions in Western North Carolina.
Which was awesome.
They won the 4A state championship. That's T.C. Robertson. Mm-hmm. And then 3A state championship was West Henderson. Both had some excellent baseball years.
Carson called the 4A champion.
He did.
I won't take too much credit, but I did. Absolutely.
He did. We were on here. He said Robertson will win the state championship. He was right. I mean, they beat a team that had some pretty big players, some D1 commits.
4A, it's what we've talked about. We talked about with football. I mean, they had to play the biggest schools they were the biggest classification, the biggest schools in the state. They went through and they played them. And I was, they did lose one game in the state championship round, so they had to play game 3, but they 10-run the team game 1 of the playoffs of the state championship series, and they lost game 2, which meant that was their first school they lost to that was a public school, a public North Carolina school. So that was just mind-blowing. But perfect game just released the top teams from every state. Robertson was ranked number 1. It's just, I think it's a testament. Well, we talked about earlier in the podcast, on the previous podcast, what Coach Philipek does over there. This was, he would not, if we, and hopefully we're going to be able to get him on at some point.
Carson was supposed to get him on, but
hopefully
he's not here.
Hopefully we're going to get him on in the future. And he would just say, I would think that he, not to put words in his mouth, but he has an expectation. I mean, that's what they set out every year is to win a state championship. And I know that there's not a lot of programs like that. West Henderson, they've got a absolute generational talent as a, Truett Manuel, who is a junior that this past weekend, he's been up to 96 miles an hour. He's a freak athlete, plays all 3 sports, had, I think, 30-something touchdowns. On football, he's more of a bruiser, rebounder and stuff. Basketball stats aren't, everything to hang his hat on.
But he's a hell of a football player.
But he is a hell of a football player. He's a hell of an athlete. He's a absolute professional athlete but he has got a lightning bolt in his right arm. And, I think that the reason that baseball state championships are, it's tough in any sport.
It's pretty easy for Western North Carolina teams, so we won 2 this year.
Two this year, and if you look and see when's the last time that teams have won them, it's because you could lose one game, and with baseball, it's not softball. So last year,
Baseball is not softball.
Baseball's
That's
not
true.
softball. So Carlin Pickens, we mentioned the SEC. I know Coach Laws, you guys mentioned her. She was able to pitch every game for North Buncombe softball last year. I mean, there's no pitch limit. You can just throw and throw and throw. And so the reason I didn't call West Henderson was I thought Truitt can beat any team that he plays for. I mean, any team. He was 11-1. His only loss this year was to Robertson. And so
did they lose to Robertson both? How many times did they play
only played
Robertson?
once. The second one got canceled. So they lost to Robertson.
Yes.
Truitt gave a home run to Robertson's leadoff batter in the 5th or 6th inning. They lost by 1 or 2. It was a close game. It was at West Henderson, and Robertson got the best of them. Robertson, is very, very young. Their first 5 batters, they had 1 senior.
Wow.
So their best pitchers, their best arms, their best players. Their shortstop's going to East Carolina. He's one of their best players. I'd take that back. But Nick Parham will go and have a career at East Carolina. But other than that, they've got their whole team coming back. So if they will lose a game next year, I'll be surprised. But we're going to try and give them the business like we do. We were tied 2-2 going into the 7th inning, and we try to tell our guys good teams play 7 innings, not just 6. So
I assume, being from Western North Carolina, Inca probably made it to the state semifinals or something, right?
No, we made the playoffs.
We did make the playoffs. That's good.
We had a quick exit. We lost to Ashboro, but it's just like we said. They have
a nice zoo there.
They do. They're Ashboro. I've heard they've got a nice zoo. But, West Henderson, for those schools to be as close as Arden and Mills River is, for them to win the 2 biggest classifications, I don't know if that's ever happened before. That is very, very, very astonishing. Credit to Jackie Korn at West Henderson and what he did. I just, with Truitt only being able to throw 1 game, one first round, third round, he actually didn't even throw the first round. So, which all the baseball people in the area were like, it's, probably the first time that you didn't have to use your ace in any capacity game 1, because you don't pitch them and then you lose, and then it's like Jackie would have got ran out of town if they would have lost round 1 and Truitt Manuel would not have pitched.
What are the restrictions for pitchers? I know I don't know. You guys probably don't know either.
So the pitch count is 105 pitches, and then you've got to have, I believe it's 5 full days rest, maybe 6.
So if I throw 50 pitches in game 1, can I throw another 50 in game 2?
So it goes off of pitches, and then that's how many days rest you have. So, under 35 pitches, you can pitch the next day. Under 50 pitches, you have to have 1 full day's rest. Under 65 pitches, you can have 2 full days rest. So what Robertson usually does, and this is just something that they've got enough depth, they've always been able to do this, they try to ensure that their pitchers, they don't want to burn any of their pitchers so they could not play. So if round 1's on Tuesday, they want to throw enough pitchers so that they could all be available in round 2.
Nice.
So mentioning your quick exit from the playoffs.
Yes.
Jeez. Wow. Trying to keep the gloves up, Lewis.
I love it.
I got the opportunity this weekend to watch a 6U, 8U, and 10U team take state championship.
Gritty.
From Hominy Valley.
Which is Inca.
Right.
That hurts.
So they are getting these kids ready. I mean, what's happening?
Is it coaching at the high school level?
I think it has to be coaching. I think that.
Wow.
I think that.
Ask Lewis if it was baseball or softball he had this
It
week.
was softball.
It was softball. I was going to say that the Sugar Jets, I mean, they went 22-0, or the softball team had it going this year. I think they lost in the 4th round. And I really think their coach, Jen, I don't know if she would have expected them to go undefeated this year. But I do know that softball, we've talked about what's king. I will speak firsthand that softball at Inca High School and softball over there is absolutely the truth. It's the truth in the way. Their field is second to none.
We've talked about this before. Hominy Valley has some good youth sports programs, football, softball.
Yeah.
I mean, they should be winning state championships over there. Inca, what's the problem?
I think Coach Griffin needs to look himself in the mirror, to be honest with you.
I want to meet Coach Griffin. I've heard a lot about him.
No, he's awesome. He's an awesome guy. He cares. You guys would love to sit down with him. He does things the right way. He really is a college coach. It's just at a high school. He is absolutely the real deal. Cares about his kids. Does things the right way. He types up a practice schedule It's every minute. You guys could show up in Inca baseball practice, and you would know at 4:42 exactly where you're supposed to be and what you're supposed to do. And he does that, and I think that with
Pat would be late.
Pat would be late.
Agony.
But I always give him a hard time. Teaching schedule, being a PE teacher has just got to be the grind. But he has a planning period and all that good stuff. But I do know that he makes his money being a PE teacher, but his whole passion goes to those kids. And I don't think that it's fully appreciated all the time. But I will say that we've got, for the most part, we've got a great group of kids that really appreciate Coach Griffin. I do think that there are some things that we can improve on as a program, but we don't recruit. I want every good baseball player in the area to come play at Inca baseball.
They had 9 D1 students, just saying. They're all going to D1 schools, 9 of them, right?
Baseball?
Yeah.
No, we had 1, which is a big deal. I think that's 1 more than Reynolds had, but
Wow.
He just took a shot at Reynolds baseball.
Wow.
But no, Reynolds baseball that's an awesome job over there.
Carson played at Reynolds for like 10 minutes.
I did. I played at Reynolds.
Now, Coach Radford said it, and I'm pretty sure, didn't Coach Laws say the new coach over at Inca for football, Sexton? You guys know him.
I can't believe you didn't know Coach Sexton.
I don't know
was
him. I've
so
been
embarrassed.
here 10 minutes.
I was so embarrassed. I'm like, oh, God, Pat doesn't know Coach Sexton.
No, I had no clue.
So he coached at Irwin. Here's my earliest remembrance of Coach Sexton. He turned Irwin around. Irwin had like a 600-game losing streak, and he showed up at Irwin, and they started winning games. And, in fact, they beat Reynolds one year in the regular season. It was like, I want to say like 60-7 or something.
Wow.
Now, Reynolds beat them in the playoffs. Reynolds showed up and beat them. It was like one of those games where everything that goes wrong went wrong. But, yeah, he turned Irwin around. I mean, they were a football program. When Irwin, Asheville, and Reynolds are all good in football, it makes everybody better. I know Coach Laws is like, I don't want Asheville to be good. He does. In reality, he wants that tough game because he needs it. You can't just play 4 tough games in August and then be ready for the playoffs. You need some tough games along the way. You need Asheville to be good. You need Irwin to be good. You need Inca to be respectable. You need North Buncombe to at least field 11. I mean, you need some competition out of your conference.
I'd like to ask Lewis something. What does this mean to you? So there's a saying out there for coaches. It's about Jimmys and Joes, not X's and O's. What does that mean to you?
You got to have kids.
You have to have guys, right?
Right. So one of the biggest things that's hurting Owen is, all the manufacturers moved out, the kids have moved out.
Yep.
There's nothing but grandparents there. You have to have kids, right? That's where it starts.
Coach Radford said the same thing in the interview about
you got to have the kids
in Asheville because it
Coach
so
Laws said the
expensive
same thing. You got to have the kids.
So it's like we all 3 think that Coach Laws, Coach
There's 4 of
Radford, and
us sitting
Coach
here.
Walker, all 3 of you guys, think that you guys had the interviews with them. We all think that you guys all think that they're doing the right thing. They're working hard. They care about their programs, whatnot. What do those 3 coaches? What are their records at Inca North Buncombe next year?
What, if they
What is
coach Inca and
what
North
is
Buncombe?
Pat? What is Coach Laws' record at Inca next season?
Inca's on the rise,
Yeah,
man. Inca's on the rise.
So what? 8-3.
Sure.
Come on, Pat.
I don't have a clue.
My point is I think Coach Laws is as good as a football coach as it gets. X's and O's, getting the most out of his players. You said being able to motivate your kids, that's half of it in high school sports. If they'd get out in the road for traffic, I mean, we're trying to get our kids to buy into a 2-strike approach. So I probably need to talk to him about like things that we can do differently at Inca baseball. But it just what?
That was funny. Go ahead.
2-strike approach is a tough concept. But guys, it just goes back to Asheville's got good athletes. Reynolds has good athletes. Christ School gets good athletes. And so it's like Inca is what it is. I mean, it's only going to be. And now I do think that if you guys were to say, like, to get all the best athletes in the school to play football, that's a start. That's an absolute start.
And I think that's a problem with some of the schools other than Reynolds, is getting the best athletes to play football.
Yes.
Because everybody's so sports specific these days. Baseball's year freaking around.
Oh, yeah.
And basketball year round. I mean, all the coaches we talked to said they want their kids to play other sports.
Yeah. And I think that, with us at Inca, we share a lot of our kids. The majority of our kids play multiple sports, and they contribute in some capacity. But it just, to me, I've always thought that Reynolds had the perfect mix up, the perfect mixture that you could stir up and create. They had some country boys for the offensive line out in Fairview. They had some really, really good athletes coming out of Hall Creek and Oakley and those schools. In Irwin. But it's just one of those things that if you don't have the athletes, it makes it a lot more difficult.
The best coach in the world can't win at North Buncombe. I mean, there's just no football. There's no football athletes out there. I mean, they just don't play football. I don't know if they're playing other sports or if they just don't exist. I mean, you have to have good athletes to win.
Well, in the Inca basketball's got some decent athletes on it, and not many of them played football. So it's like I see what you guys are saying. It's trying to get all those athletes. I mean, we got kids in Inca that think they're going to the NBA, and guess what? They play basketball 360 days out of the year. Guess what? They're really good at basketball. That's fine. But we are trying to talk to our baseball players on it. It's like, we can do all this other stuff, and that's fine. And Coach Griffin will never tell a kid not to play another sport. But when Robertson has 2 baseball players in their entire program that play multiple sports, and it's football. They have 2 players that play football, so it really doesn't conflict that much. I mean, I would love for a lot of our players to play football, but where it gets tricky is when you've got some, we've got some wrestlers. Wrestling leads right up to baseball season. You come into baseball. We got basketball. We make it to the 3rd, 4th round. Well, you miss the first 2 weeks of baseball season. So it's tough. It's tough in that sense of it. But we've been talking to our kids about competing with these schools that have better athletes. Plus, they work harder. It's like, guys, we can play other stuff, but you can't go from November 15th when basketball starts to February 14th. Which they make the playoffs at Inca in basketball, and you can't go that long without touching a baseball. You just can't. You can't do it and expect to be good at least.
Pat, do we put too much pressure on these kids to play one sport? Do you feel like football's year-round for Brendan? I know he doesn't play any other sports. Is it too much? No,
I'll say this. That was his choice, not ours. We didn't pressure him. In fact, his mother and I encouraged him to continue wrestling because he was a pretty good wrestler with your son over the middle school. And
he dominated Luke.
Well, they had a good time. They were good athletes with that.
He dominated him.
And
he scraped his face across the mat. But go ahead.
But, he also would play basketball, too. We encouraged him to try out, and he was going up against he didn't have a chance to earn a spot on the basketball team, but we encouraged him to do all that because I think a more well-rounded athlete, plus keeps him out of trouble.
So I have a question about your son, and I saw some pictures of some recent camps and stuff, and that looks like he's went to some schools and done some camps and stuff. Can you speak on some of his experiences and how he's and what he thought of those schools that he went and he went and did the camps at and stuff?
Sure. Well, I think I've shared this probably here, but certainly with other people. His mother and I feel like we're building the plane a little bit while we're flying it with these camps thing, because this was not a part of my youth. This didn't exist. So, Coach Laws and the other coaching staff at Reynolds has been helpful as far as steering which camps to choose and which ones to not go. Like, he didn't go to NC State. He didn't go to Alabama. He didn't go to Clemson. Come on, that's not his wheelhouse. He focused on the Division II programs and the 1AA programs pretty much right around here. And then there were some stretch schools like JMU, App State, and EKU on this list. So anyway, he's signed up and did a lot of those. They've been very helpful. And
were they more instructional? Were they more showcasing his talents? Was it instructional stuff? I'm just not familiar with football camps and stuff. When people say they go to camps,
it's a little bit of both. The front end of it is they do that combine stuff, or the 40, the height, weight, all the measurables.
Have they been doing like his wingspan and all that?
Yeah, they did all that.
It's crazy.
They had he had to do something with the bend. They had to videotape all the kids with their bend.
They would measure.
What the heck that is.
At one camp, they measured Luke's hands. How big is his hands?
They do that. They've done that at a couple of us.
You know what they say about big hands?
You have big feet.
Big gloves.
Big gloves.
Yeah, agony. Yeah.
Jeez.
But, he's done a bunch
Pat
of
has
these.
tiny hands, but go ahead.
Yeah. I don't know, probably. He's been to, I think, 8 camps. He's got 5 more, and then he's done for the summer.
I will say this, going back to the single sport thing. I think baseball breeds the most single sport athletes.
Yeah.
If your kid loves baseball early on and that's what he wants to focus on, they will be encouraged to only play baseball throughout their
you
career.
can almost play it year round here.
You can play it year round here.
Pat, continue. I'm sorry.
Oh, I mean, he's gone to these camps, had a good experience at the camps, and he's talked to several of these schools, and the recruiting process is underway. He doesn't have any offers or anything like that, but I think that we talked about this before with the transfer portal and the COVID year, that everything's been pushed back. So we'll see.
8,144 kids in the portal when we talked to Coach Walker.
Is that how many it is? Wow.
That's a lot.
Yeah, that's a lot of kids. So, that's going to affect all high school recruiting, I think, in all sports with that element. And
yeah, absolutely. It's a whole different time. It's crazy.
It is.
It's crazy.
I would, to speak on what Lewis said, I do think that baseball is different as far as, you could have a great athlete and they could show up and they could be at any of the respective football programs August 1st and they could contribute. And that's the truth. That's the reality. It is athletic. I'm not saying that they're going to have the instincts. They're not going to have I'm not saying that they would be at their absolute best if they just showed up and picked up football for their first time. But if a athlete from the best athlete in football or the best athlete in basketball, if you pick up baseball on the first day of tryouts, you can't make the team. And so I do think that that's probably where youth kids, I'm not saying it's right or wrong, but that's probably where these, I don't know, it's just, but that's probably where they're.
Are we sure we want a baseball gown here?
There's another side to this. The other side is like the psychology of these stupid travel ball teams where you have to play from a year round or your spot's not going to be guaranteed. If you go play any other sport,
travel ball is just a new rec ball. We've talked about that. I mean, it's anybody that can pay, anybody that can come up with a team, and how many people can print uniforms out now?
But do you think it's just by chance that only two of TC players only play another sport? Everybody else is completely locked into baseball year round. They've been bred that since they were 8 years old.
Absolutely.
You have to play with me year round or your spot on the team is gone. And these parents sit around and worry about this constantly.
I'm not over there in their locker room and in their parent section and whatnot, but I would ask you guys if travel football was a thing and you could go play. Did your son play youth football?
Yeah, he played for Anka.
Okay.
Yeah.
Nice.
East Buncombe.
Okay, East Buncombe Youth Rockets. I was an East Buncombe Rocket alum as well. But if I would ask you guys, if there was an opportunity when your kids were younger, I mean, I know football's different because you don't play as much and you don't want to the bodies and stuff.
You can't play 4 games in a weekend.
No, I know. I'm just asking. If there was an opportunity that you guys, would they have played? Would you guys have ever entertained travel football?
It's a thing now.
I would.
Is it a thing now?
I would 100% done it.
Okay, so I just.
Why would you say that? You won't even do travel baseball. Your kids. You had a kid who was really good at baseball.
The reason I would have done it is because football is such a big deal, right? To me, baseball is not such a big deal.
But if it's their best sport, it should be a big deal.
I think I would never get doing the umpiring on the weekends for these USSSA tournaments, I would hate to be one of those parents in the stands because I sit there and listen to them constantly.
Oh, I couldn't. If my son decides to play, I'm going to put which he loves. I mean, of course, my dad got him a Tykes tee, and baseball bat's his favorite toy to play with, and he's got everything under the sun. But I'm going to try and put a tennis racket, a golf club. I'm going to try.
You better put him a football uniform on.
Oh, he's gonna knock ahead.
But I sit there and I listen to these parents, and you can hear the mom and the dad talk like, Mike just missed this ball on third base.
Toxic. It's toxic.
He's going to be benched next inning. He's not going to play anymore. We're going to have to find a new team. This is because he missed one ball. This
got to be better.
This literally happens. This literally happens every Saturday and Sunday.
And so you would take your kid to play football in the same environment.
Pay to play.
It's not the same environment.
But it could be.
But travel baseball has become so toxic.
It's watered down and toxic. We've established that. But there are absolute. And I would go out to say, when you get to high school and when you start playing like these upper level travel ball and upper level showcases are different.
Correct.
So upper level showcases, the Wes Henderson pitcher, he plays for 5-star national. It's an absolute top team in the country. Every kid on his team is going to go play ACC or SEC baseball. And so there's 4 players at Robertson are all on the top team in the state of North Carolina, which actually pulls from. I mean, it pulls nationally now, but Dirtbags is their organization. They've had
Lewis is a dirtbag. Just saying.
I'm familiar with it.
People are familiar in the area, but just to go on, I just think it's one of those that I think, and you guys tell me if I'm wrong, but I think parents are more likely to think that their kid could go, which is not the case. But they're more likely they could go pro in baseball than they could basketball or football. And that might be right or wrong.
Well, there's a lot more pro baseball players than any other sport, right?
Well, I will say this.
Not
The standouts for the other team, like the standouts for football is very obvious. The standouts for basketball is very obvious. The standouts for baseball, maybe not so obvious.
Yeah, well, there's more baseball players in college. There's more I don't know. It seems like there's more kids that go play college baseball, but that doesn't necessarily mean that that there's more kids that go play at the highest level and whatnot. I just think that kids need to be kids. Kids need to play as many as they can. But I do think there's a time where a kid just will naturally, a kid wants to do, Pat mentioned, and I don't think that I think this was how my upbringing as well. I don't think my dad made me play anything. I think that's all I wanted to do. When I got home from school, it was like, my mom I would try and finish my homework before I got done with school because I would try and finish it before I got home because I got home and I wanted to play basketball. I wanted to do something in the yard with my brothers.
Yeah, I mean, as a kid, my mom always encouraged me to play everything I wanted to play, whether it was baseball, basketball, football, soccer. I mean, she wanted us to play it all. There was no travel back then.
The difference between that and now, you have the parent there videotaping everything,
right?
And they break down everything that kid does.
Yeah. So, I have a quick question for you, Pat.
Yes.
If you played baseball today,
are we talking high school level?
I mean, any level.
Look, we need to clarify because my answer changes.
Really?
I want clarification.
Okay, so pro.
Okay, if we're a pro.
If you're a pro baseball
and
player,
I'm trying to hit 102 mile per hour.
What is your walk-up song, Pat?
Oh.
What is my walk-up song?
This is interesting.
Oh.
I was going to say, I don't know if Pat's getting a hit. I'll be honest.
I know mine.
I don't think I would not get a hit in pro baseball.
My walk-up song.
Yeah, what's your walk-up song?
Would be Kesha, This Place About to Blow.
Oh. I tell you what.
Come on, man.
Yes, and Pat right now is raising his 2 hands up to the sky.
Can I go next?
Sure.
Mine's going to be a realistic answer.
I thought Pat's was excellent.
Yes!
These boots are made for walking.
These boots
I'm not
are
hitting
made
that.
for walking.
Mike, what would yours be?
Carson said his was the same. Of course, he's young enough to have had a walk-up song. When Pat and I were kids, there was no such thing.
That didn't exist.
Now, 6 to
my
12, everybody has a walk-up song.
And it's the most annoying thing for umpires.
Oh, my God.
Well, you want to
what's
hear
your
something
walk-up
funny? And
Sure.
I'm currently in an adult baseball league.
You have a walk-up song?
No. But there is a team that has a speaker with walk-up songs.
my God.
And honestly,
Give me a break.
I could not believe what I walked into.
So what's your walk-up song?
I had different ones every year. My
Okay,
favorite,
give us your top
my
one.
all-time favorite one, the one that I got the most, I wouldn't say credit from other teams, but I actually had a coach step out of the other team's dugout and like tip his hat at me, was Game of Thrones. I had the Game of Thrones intro as my walk-up song.
Nice.
So,
The Game of Thrones
and it was in the
intro.
middle of the last season, the second to last or the last season. But it was like Game of Thrones was hot at this time. It wasn't like it is now, but Game of Thrones was hot, and it was the intro and all that good stuff. My high school one was Circle of Life, Lion King. I just like to be a little bit different.
So mine would definitely be Bob Seger, Turn the Page. That saxophone solo at the beginning.
Which, just so you know, every time when we set up for a football game, we had to play it for Mike.
So
You
Lewis
had a walk-up song for setting up to.
So here's the thing.
That's absolutely true.
Hang on.
That is incredible.
Hang on.
I'm learning something every day.
Lewis and I used to,
Wow.
when our kids played youth league, we got there early. We put all the pads on the posts. We set up the water. We put up the end zone orange things. I mean, we did all that.
I had
That's
to
what we
hook
did.
up all the electronics.
Yeah, of course, Lewis had to do the electronics. Well, the president, Durrell would show up, of course, late. Lewis and I would almost be done. And he would always turn on Bob Seger, Turn the Page. I love that song.
Yeah.
And when that saxophone hits at the beginning, I'm like, yes. I just love that song. I like the Metallica version as well. I just like Turn the Page.
A lot of very, very, very good options out there for walk-up songs.
Yeah. So
I'm disappointed in all of you.
why?
None of you commented on my beard.
Oh my God! That's
that
like
I've been growing in.
It looks like you
I
forgot
haven't
to shave
noticed
for
it.
a day.
Yeah.
Now I've been working on this for 2 weeks.
Oh
I'll
my
have you
God!
know.
That's it.
That's 2 weeks.
So I cut mine off, except for a little bit. I still have a beard, but it's shorter now.
I don't have any.
Well, that's because you're 16 years old.
I'll be honest, I don't. The listeners will probably see a picture.
I can't wait to put a picture of Carson on there with no beard.
Yeah.
Behind the no beard is what Carson is on. The rest of us are on behind the
I
beard.
can't wait to give the listeners truth, actually, what they want to hear.
Oh my gosh! Strike 3. He's done. So I think that's it for tonight. We really enjoyed getting together and talking. We have had some interviews. We've had to be on our best behavior, and it's nice to cut loose. I really want to thank Wild Turkey 101 for tonight. Pat, go ahead, close us out.
Well, thank you all for tuning in and listening. And, I think we also have to thank the Bandettes again. They've provided us a wonderful song.
Absolutely. I love that song.
We got the video and everything else. Did you ever put that up on the site?
It's coming on tomorrow.
All right, good, because that's awesome stuff right there. So tune into the Bandettes. They got some good things going on.
Hey, and we also want to hear from you.
Yeah, we'd like to hear from you guys. What do
Yes.
you all want to hear about?
If you got questions, man, send them to us. Send us, if you know us, text us. If not, send it on Facebook, DM, or if you want to email us, behindthebeardwnc@gmail.com.
Absolutely.
We're still trying to get Coach Philippak on.
Yep.
We're also trying to get the coach from Owen, you remind me his name?
Coach Gibson?
Coach Gibson on. We'd like to talk to those guys. If not, we'll be back in a couple of weeks. I want to share something with you. We're 2 months from football season, guys.
Yeah, I can't wait.
It's awesome. Getting
2
excited.
months.
I don't know about you guys. 7-on-7's already been happening over at Owen. It's been great to watch.
That does not include my kid.
No, nor mine.
North Carolina just passed sports betting legal in 2024, so
I
that's
saw
that's
that.
enormous.
So
That's-
Carson is a big bettor, and
Are you?
he drives to Tennessee to bet.
I do. I drive to Tennessee.
Well, we need to start setting up some side bets because we also enjoy it. We used to bet at at youth league football games.
It's
I
true.
like that. I like
True.
that.
I would love to, and I wish. Hopefully, we can figure it out. We want to do a pick'em league this year where can you outpick the beard, and we want to pick our Buncombe County High School games. And are you better at picking than we are? I don't know.
I'm sure they're better than I am.
Well, so, of course, because you're going to pick Reynolds to win every game, whether they're playing or not.
Of course, yes, I will.
There'll be some spreads on the Reynolds game, and I've already come up with the Inca spread will be 49 points. So
It's hard to score more than 40 because of that running
the
clock.
running clock. So,
yeah.
so it's going to be because I think everybody knows the saying: "Good teams win, great teams cover." So we'll just have to we'll just play that one by ear. Stay tuned.
So hopefully we can do a pick 'em on our Facebook page or somewhere where you guys can see if you're better at picking than Lewis and Pat and Carson and I. Carson already admitted he knows nothing about football, so it shouldn't be that hard.
Right.
Should be very easy. You guys should be 1-0 to start
Yeah, and I'm old and senile, so there's another easy win.
with
That's
the
true.
Kesha walk-up song.
Yeah, right?
That's what I'm talking about.
This
Oh,
place
man.
about to blow.
Boom. Thanks, guys. We want to thank you for joining us tonight. We of course, want to thank the Bandettes, like we mentioned. Thank you, Carson, for joining us now. And Pat, what else you got?
I got nothing. We're back in a couple of weeks. We'll figure out something to talk to and talk about. Until then, thanks for tuning in. Carson, Mike, Lewis, thanks for coming over. It's a
Good night,
time.
guys.
Thanks,
Thank you,
everyone.
guys.